Morning, folks. This is a straightforward little tutorial on how to make good pastry. Not super fancy, fantastic pastry, but just good pastry that you're gonna like, and like in my case, my customers like. This isn't about the ingredients. This is about the mechanics of putting a pastry together and ensuring that it's going to be flaky and tender. So I'm not going to cover the ingredients that I use. It's just a very ordinary pastry recipe, and I use lard. You can use shortening or butter, and your recipe should work just fine if you follow these kind of simple rules. So this is pastry that's already have the lard cut in, and then I'm going to add the liquid, and all that is water, cold water, an egg, and a couple of tablespoons of vinegar. The key element that you must always keep in mind while you're handling your pastry, and the problem that 99% of the time occurs is you've overmixed. And so with these simple steps, you can make sure that your pastry, by the time you get it into the pie shell, isn't overmixed. So I've cut in the lard, as I said, and you'll see that there's some pretty good sized chunks in here. And that's a good thing. What you must keep in the back of your mind at all times when you're handling your pastry is every time you touch it, you're mixing it. So I'm mixing it here. I'm mixing it when I have the fluid in. What you overlook generally is that beyond this point, once I have this all consolidated into the consistency that I want to work with, is that the steps after this, every time you touch it, you're mixing it. It's good to use your hands when you're mixing like this, and I'm not crushing the lard into the rest of the mix. I'm essentially tossing it like a salad so that the liquid gets incorporated, particularly into the flour, leaving the lard chunks as undisturbed as possible. And for some reason, when the consistency I'm looking for always reminds me of like shredded up cotton or something like that. And all I want is to be able to get this to a stage where it will hold together and roll out and no further. I don't want this to get so well incorporated that it essentially is all uniform. And you can take this approach to things like biscuits as well, or scones. You want to mix this to the bare minimum that will allow it to hold together. And that is about it right there. So I have good sized chunks of lard still in there. And when I fold it like this into a ball that I'm going to use for a pie shell, it holds together nicely, but you can see that there's a mottled look to it, or a marbling type of consistency to it. And here's the key again that I'll remind you. I'm mixing it. As I'm doing this, I'm mixing it. As I roll it out onto the table to get to the pie shell that I want, I'm mixing it. So what you have to do right from the beginning is anticipate all of those steps that are mixing, and then essentially undermix at the beginning, so that by the time you get to rolling out, it is a good consistency and will give you a nice, flaky, tender pastry. Hope that helps.